1,000 years ago, the Druze shut their doors. No one else could join. Ever. For over a millennium, the Druze have maintained one of the strictest community boundaries in human history. No conversions in, no marriages out. The faith itself was closed to newcomers around 1050 CE. Historians knew the Druze practiced strict endogamy. But knowing a rule exists is not proof. It was followed. Tested the claim. And the DNA confirmed what no document could. Multiple genetic studies over the past 2 decades have sampled Druze communities across Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. The largest studies sequenced hundreds of Druze genomes and compared them to neighboring populations. The results were striking. The Druze carry a genetic signature found nowhere else on Earth. Their DNA has been drifting alone for roughly 40 generations. No outside input detected. The principal component analysis showed the Druze clustering apart from every neighboring group. Lebanese Christians, Lebanese Muslims, Syrians, Palestinians. The Druze sit apart from all of them, and the genetic distance is not subtle. It is unmistakable in every analysis method applied. FST values, a standard measure of genetic differentiation, place the Druze further from their Lebanese neighbors than most European nations are from each other. When geneticists run clustering algorithms, the Druze consistently emerge as their own distinct group. At every value of K tested, the Druze maintain a unique ancestral component that neighboring groups lack entirely. This is not a subtle signal. The Druze genome screams isolation. But before we examine how, we need to understand why they sealed their community in the first place. To understand why this matters, you need to understand who the Druze are and where they came from. The Druze faith emerged in Cairo around 1017 CE during the Fatimid Caliphate. It began as a reform movement within Ismaili Islam. Then it became something entirely new. The faith drew followers from across the Levant and Egypt during its brief period of open conversion. For approximately 25 years, people could enter the faith. Then, around 1043 CE, the door closed. No new converts would be accepted. Marriage outside the community was forbidden. The Druze retreated into the mountains of Lebanon, Syria, and the Galilee. Geography reinforced the social boundary. Mountain communities were naturally defensible. Outsiders rarely penetrated the highest villages. Over centuries, the Druze developed a reputation for fierce independence and military skill. The Ottoman Empire, the Crusaders, and later the French colonial authorities all dealt with the Druze as a distinct and formidable community. The community became a closed population, and it has remained closed for a millennium. That is the claim. 25 years of open doors, then 1,000 years of silence. The genetic evidence now proves it, and the mechanism is visible at the molecular level. The first evidence comes from runs of homozygosity, identical DNA on both copies of a chromosome. When people marry within a closed community for generations, both parents inevitably share distant ancestors. Their children inherit identical DNA segments from those shared ancestors on both chromosomes. The longer the community has been closed, the longer the ROH segments become. Short RAH ancient indicate ancient shared ancestry. Long segments indicate recent shared ancestry within a few generations. The Druze carry both short and long ROH segments. This confirms sustained isolation over many centuries, not a recent bottleneck. The pattern is consistent across Druze communities in all 3 countries: Lebanon, Syria, Israel. The ROH signature is remarkably uniform, regardless of which Druze village the samples came from. The Druze show significantly elevated ROH compared to all neighboring populations. Their chromosomes carry the signature of 1,000 years of marrying within the community. Effective population size estimates show a dramatic contraction beginning roughly 1,000 years ago. The timing matches the historical closure almost exactly. Admixture analysis provides a second proof. The Druze show almost zero gene flow after the closure. Lebanese Christians and Muslims share significant recent ancestry with each other and with broader Levantine populations. The Druze do not. Their genetic profile froze when the community closed. And this isolation has had medical consequences that geneticists can measure. Closed populations accumulate rare genetic variants that would otherwise be diluted by gene flow. Every generation of endogamy increases the probability of rare recessive alleles meeting in a single individual. In large outbred populations, the chance of both parents carrying the same rare mutation is vanishingly small. In a closed community of 1 million sharing founders from 1,000 years ago, the mathematics are entirely different. Geneticists have identified multiple disease-causing mutations that are found at elevated frequencies exclusively in the Druze. But here's the twist. The isolation that preserved their identity also concentrated rare mutations. At least a dozen recessive conditions appear at higher rates among the Druze than in any neighboring population. Some of these conditions affect the nervous system. Others affect metabolism or organ development. Each condition traces to a single founder mutation that was present in the original community at low frequency. These are not diseases caused by endogamy itself. They are random mutations that every population carries. In an open population, carriers rarely meet other carriers of the same rare mutation. In a closed population, the odds of two carriers marrying increase with every generation. A haplogroup does not equal a disease, but a founder effect can amplify what was already there. Israeli hospitals now offer targeted carrier screening for Druze-specific mutations. The medical genetics community treats the Druze as a distinct population for screening purposes. This is the paradox of genetic isolation. Cultural preservation and medical vulnerability are inseparable. The same closure that protected the community's identity also trapped mutations inside it. The deeper question is what the Druze DNA tells us about where they came from before the closure. Their pre-closure ancestry is overwhelmingly Levantine. They are genetically rooted in the Eastern Mediterranean, but within that Levantine profile, the Druze show traces of multiple ancient population layers. Some studies have detected a minor but consistent signal of Iranian-related ancestry in the Druze genome. The Fatimid court in Cairo drew scholars and converts from across the Islamic world, including Persia. Some of those early converts may have carried Persian-related DNA into the founding Druze population. When the community closed, that trace of Persian ancestry was sealed in alongside the dominant Levantine signature. This aligns with the Fatimid connection. The movement that founded the faith had Persian intellectual roots. The Ismaili theologians who shaped early Druze doctrine came from across the Islamic world. But the core of the Druze genome predates Islam entirely. Their deepest ancestry traces to Bronze Age Levantine populations. They are, in genetic terms, among the most direct living descendants of the ancient Canaanite-speaking peoples. The Phoenicians who built Sidon, Tyre, and Byblos left a genetic legacy that persists most strongly in the Druze. This finding was independently replicated by Haber and colleagues using whole genome sequencing of ancient Sidon burials. The ancient Sidonians themselves were a mix of local Levantine and Chalcolithic ancestry, stretching back thousands of years further. By closing their community, the Druze accidentally preserved an ancient genetic profile that open populations diluted through centuries of migration and admixture. A 2017 study published in the American Journal of Human Genetics confirmed this directly. The Druze are genetically closer to Bronze Age Sidonians than almost any other living population. Sidon traded across the Mediterranean 3,000 years ago. Its genetic descendants sealed themselves in the mountains. The irony is striking. A community known for its isolation preserves the oldest continuous genetic thread in the Levant. The implications extend beyond genetics. The Druze model challenges how we think about population boundaries. Most populations in the Middle East show high levels of gene flow with their neighbors. Lebanese Christians share recent ancestry with Syrians. Palestinians share ancestry with Jordanians. Genetic borders rarely match political or religious ones. The Druze are the exception. Their genetic border matches their religious boundary almost perfectly. And this boundary has held across geographic separation. Druze in Lebanon, Syria, and Israel show remarkable genetic similarity to each other. Despite living in different countries under different governments for generations, They remain one genetic community. The genetic distance between Druze in Lebanon and Druze in Israel is smaller than the distance between villages 10 miles apart in some other populations. National borders did not break what religious law had sealed. Marriage within the community is still the overwhelming norm. Today, the seal continues. Outmarriage rates remain below 5% across all Druze communities studied. Within the community, extended family networks remain strong. Marriages are often arranged between known families. Each marriage reinforces the genetic boundary. Each generation deepens the isolation signal. The community today numbers roughly 1 million people across Lebanon, Syria, and Israel. The religious leadership has maintained the closure for over 40 generations without a single documented reopening. No other known population of comparable size has maintained this level of genetic isolation for this duration. Island populations like Sardinians and Icelanders show comparable isolation, but their barriers are physical. The Ashkenazi Jewish population shows a similar but less extreme pattern of endogamy-driven genetic drift. But the Ashkenazi bottleneck lasted centuries. The Druze closure has lasted a full millennium. The Druze also differ in one critical respect. Their closure was not imposed by persecution. It was chosen. There are isolated island populations, but the Druze did this deliberately, by choice, surrounded by neighbors. They live in one of the most diverse regions on Earth, and they remained genetically distinct. Beirut alone contains Christians, Sunni Muslims, Shia Muslims, and Druze living within miles of each other. The other groups have exchanged genes continuously over centuries. Their genetic boundaries are blurred. The Druze line on every network diagram is the thinnest. Often, it is absent entirely. Two villages separated by a single valley. Genetically, they might as well be separated by an ocean. The genetic distance between the Druze and their nearest Lebanese neighbors exceeds the distance between some European nations. The convergence of evidence from multiple independent research groups makes the conclusion robust. Haber and colleagues at the Wellcome Sanger Institute published comprehensive Druze genome data in 2013. Independently, Zaidan and colleagues at Carmel Medical Center analyzed Druze carrier frequencies for rare genetic conditions. Different teams, different methods, same conclusion. The seal held. The DNA does not lie. But the question that remains is what happens next. Urbanization is drawing younger Druze into mixed cities. Social media connects them to the wider world. In cities like Haifa, Beirut, and Swaida, younger Druze interact daily with non-Druze peers. Education and professional careers increasingly take young Druze outside their traditional village networks. The social pressures that maintained endogamy for a millennium are weakening in the 21st century. Whether the community adapts while maintaining its boundary remains the defining question of this generation. The pressures that maintained isolation for a millennium are not what they were, held for 1,000 years. Whether it holds for another generation is an open question. Demographic projections suggest even small increases in outmarriage would rapidly dissolve the genetic distinctiveness. 5% outmarriage maintained over several generations would erase the isolation signal within 2 centuries. What took 40 generations to build could unravel in 5. What this ultimately tells us is that culture can shape biology as powerfully as geography or climate. The Druze are not an island population cut off by water. They are a cultural island surrounded by genetic exchange, and their DNA proves that a social rule enforced by faith can be as effective as an ocean. Every generation buried in these mountains adds another layer to the genetic record. Some Druze researchers are now studying their own community's genetics from the inside. They see the medical applications as critical. Carrier screening saves lives within a community where founder mutations are concentrated. The genetics can protect the community even as it reveals the cost of isolation. 1,000 years, 40 generations, one unbroken genetic boundary maintained by a single decision. No army built this wall. No geography enforced it. Only a choice, repeated every generation. If you appreciate stories where culture and DNA intersect, Subscribe, because the next video might reveal what your own ancestors chose to preserve or let go. Should genetic isolation be studied or respected, or both?